Um, okay, welcome everyone to the coaching webinar. We are joined by our special guest, Mr. Agustin Peraita. Agustin, how are you this morning?
I'm really happy to be here with you and looking forward having this chat with you and all the coaches. I will be glad to start with some points, and then we can go for the debate questions. That is always interesting for everybody.
Okay. So Agustin, I think the first question that we always try to ask our guests so that we can get an understanding of them is how and why did you start coaching?
Well, I started being interested in coaching when I was a kid, and I started playing video games, like coaching video games. You were not the one playing, you were the one that was making the lineup and like creating the tactics and all that.
Championship manager.
That's it. In Spain, there was another one that was really popular here. So that was like the first point of reference for me when I didn't thought that it was possible to be a football coach. No, when you are at the school, nobody tells you that it is possible. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, but football coach is not a profession that they suggest you to go in. So when I grew up and I finished my career as a soccer player, as a football player, that was really soon. When I was 21 or so, I reached the top level I could arrive. So I had to quit and started at the same club I was playing. I started helping the coaches. I was 21, I had no experience, I had no formation, so I started just being an assistant of the coaches. And only 1 or 2 years after that experience, I decided to join the coaching courses. And with that formation, I had some like the theoretical basis to get my first job as a coach. And that was with 23, 24 years. And since then to until these days, had been like 8 years. I am coaching or involved in football as a coach.
Sorry about that. Let me just mute that for you. Muting. Come on. There we go. Sorry about that, Agustin.
Don't worry.
So you are a coach. Could you tell everyone what current license you hold?
Yes, I have the UEFA Pro license here. That is the maximum I could get. I did 3 years of formation, 3 years of studies to get it, and that's it. I am all the time I try to study a little bit more, see conference courses online, because now I am in the role of tactical analysis. That is a kind of different. I have to do a lot of video analysis, video managing and all that. And that makes me need to learn about new tools, new ways of doing this job. And that's it. Nowadays, I am doing this job of video analysis of one of the national teams of China, the under 16. And we are going to play the ASEAN Cup this year, in November, December of this year. And this is the challenge we have ahead. Every month we are training and we are doing friendlies to prepare this championship that is really important for the country, because not only because of it, but it's important because next year in 2021 there is the World Cup under 17, and if you are in the semifinals of the Asian Cup, you will be promoted to the World Cup next year of under 17s.
Wow. So how has your experiences in China been? And have you learned any Chinese?
Not yet, not yet. All the coaches of the team, we are Spanish. So we talk between us in Spanish, and we have one translator for the group. So I have been working there only for 5 months. So it's not a long time. And we are working in Spanish because the coaches are all Spanish, and we have a translator for the players.
Well, thank you. That is the end of the first part, which is just a little background into Agustin and his great career so far. The second part, we're going to dive straight into it. We're going to talk about positional play. So the first question, of course, people always ask is, what is positional play? How would you define positional play?
That is a really good question, because it's really difficult to define it. For me, what I find better to identify positional play is a team that uses the localization, the place where their players are, to get advantage in order to beat the opposition. And that can be not only with the ball, not only in the offensive phase, but can be done in the defensive phase too. So if with the shape of my players in every play, I am trying to get advantage to overcome a pressing, or to overcome the defensive block of the opposition, or even if the way I put my players, or they are organizing and reorganizing defensively, we are trying to seek an advantage. It's positional play. It's not possession is not the key of positional play. Position is the key. So positioning well your players in every moment, because every moment demand a different positioning, is the key. And if they are able to adapt their position to the opponent's challenge at every time, that means they are developing positional play.
That's a very good definition or description. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about your book at the end, but luckily for me, I am, because of where I am, I was able to get your book, and I have been able to read. I've gotten right through most of it. I have to say thank you, because I think this is probably the best definition that someone has given me of Pep's play. Because to be honest with you, I was one of those people who bought into the idea that Pep's play was based around just possession. And one of the things I like that you said in the book is that it is positional play, not possession play. So could you explain why that is, why it's positional play instead of possession play?
Yes, let me talk about the book that you are mentioning. This is the book I wrote in 2015, 5 years ago, and it was describing the Guardiola's Barcelona in those days, and I did it through tactical periodization. I mean, I used the methodology and the tactical perspective of tactical periodization to analyze and create a proposal of developing how to play as Guardiola's Barcelona for any team. No matter the players you have, or no matter the age group you are practicing with. And this book, luckily, was translated and published in English. That's why you could get it.
Sorry about that.
And in this book, I go through all the playing principles of that Barcelona of Guardiola. And one of them, or maybe the main of them, is that they wanted to control the space. The main principle is trying to control the space of play. So we are not trying to keep possession, we are trying to control the space. And how is the best way, not the only way, but how is the best way to control the space is getting the ball and positioning ourselves to control all the possible space with that ball. But as you said, there is the other part. There will be times where you don't have, you will not have the ball, and you will have to organize yourself to control all the space and get the ball back to be in control of the game, because you cannot be in control of the game without the ball. You can control the space, but you will not be able to score without the ball. So at least for some little time, you need to control the space and the ball, and keep the control of the space every time.
Two really good things that I like from the book is that you explain the history for people to have a bit of understanding as to the background of where positional play came from and where Pep Guardiola got some of his ideas. I think it was really good because then, I did my own research as well. You talked about the influence of Johan Cruyff.
Mm-hmm.
You also talked about the influence of Louis van Gaal.
Mm-hmm.
And you also talked about the influence of Frank Rijkaard.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of the 6-second rule. I didn't know that it came from Frank Rijkaard. Could you talk a little bit just about the influences of possession play? Oh, sorry, and I forgot to mention, of course, one of the most important parts, Pep Guardiola's travel to Mexico and his learnings over there. Could you just talk a bit about those influences on?
Yes, sure. So Guardiola was a son of Football Club Barcelona. He started playing there in the youth teams with 13, 14 years old, was the captain of the first team, and mostly his career was there. So there he could train with Johan Cruyff, that was one of his mentors and one of the main coaches of positional play, because he had learned it in Holland, back in the Netherlands, with his coaches and in the national team, and he was the one that brought this positional play to Barcelona, where he took Guardiola from the second team with 20 years old and bring him to the first team, and they stayed together for 5 years. After Cruyff left Barcelona, 2 years after Cruyff, Louis van Gaal, another Holland coach, Netherlands coach, came to Barcelona to continue the developing of positional play in the club. And Guardiola was still a player and the captain of that team, so he could be in contact with Louis van Gaal and his assistant, that is Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho was the assistant coach of Louis van Gaal for 2 years in Barcelona. So they could learn together, and Guardiola was not treated well by the president at that time, so he wanted to leave the club to finish his career abroad. First, he went to Italy, where he played for 1 year, and his second year he did it in Mexico. In Italy, he always speaks about how he learned how to defend, how to be a really compact block in defense, and he went to Mexico only because of the coach that called him to play for him. It was Juan Malillo, one of the best known Spanish coaches for his theory of the game, for his theory of positional play. He is currently Guardiola assistant coach in Manchester City, but he had a big career before that. He also was the assistant of Sampaoli in Sevilla and in the Chile national team, and he had been the first coach of Real Sociedad in Spain, Sevilla in Spain, and a lot of first division teams. Well, he called Guardiola to go to Mexico, and Guardiola said, okay, I could still play here in Europe, but I want to learn from him. I want to go there and learn about his training sessions, about the concept he uses, because I know that he's a really unique coach for his understanding of positional play. So he went to Mexico to play for Dorados of Sinaloa for 1 year, only to learn with Juan Malillo. And after that, he went to the Arab countries to do his last experience as a football player, and then he retired and started some years later his studies as a coach and his career as a coach in the second team of Barcelona first, and then in the first team. But what is really interesting of Guardiola's career as a football player is that he was preparing himself while playing, because he had two really good coaches as Van Gaal and Cruyff in Barcelona. Additionally, he had Mourinho too. And then he went to Italy to understand the defensive dynamics of the game. And he had another experience in Mexico, only to work with a coach that he admired at that time.
I think one thing that I really like about your book is that you broke down a lot of the misconceptions about positional play, about Barcelona, and about the way Guardiola likes his teams to play. I think one of the key quotes from the book that you said is that the Barca of Guardiola has done a lot of harm to football. Could you explain a little what you mean by that, just for people?
Sure. I think that as anything in nature, as in anything in life, all the events have two consequences. And in the case of Guardiola, and I think in every case, everything has a good consequence and a similar, with the same impact in the bad way. The Barcelona Guardiola was a gift for the eyes of all the spectators. They brought a lot of beauty for football, and they inspire a lot of fans, a lot of players, and a lot of coaches to play in that way. But at the same time, that positive impact had a negative consequence. And that negative consequence is that a lot of coaches try to copy, to replicate the Guardiola formula, and try to make their teams have the possession, play from the back, risk the ball where it was not necessary to risk the ball. And that has created a generation of coaches that are forcing their players to play in a way that they are not able to. And as some of those coaches, they are not helping them to improve in that way of playing. They are only forcing them to play in that way. So they are not giving the tools, they are not giving the knowledge, the learning tools that they need to develop that positional play. They are only saying, we need to build from the back, we need to have possession, and that's all I want. And that is creating a lot of mistrust in the players, because they are feeling that they are not able to get the result or the efficacy they used to before those coaches appear in their lives. And a lot of clubs, a lot of teams are losing competitiveness because of the desire of the coaches to replicate a formula that maybe they don't understand, maybe they cannot develop, they maybe is not suitable for the players that they have. So that's why I claim that Barcelona has harmed football too. It has had a positive impact, but negative consequences too.
One thing, like I said, one thing I like about your book is that you explained it in a way which, hasn't been explained very well. I think there's a lot of books written about Guardiola, but often it is always that possession focus. But you made me to understand that it is more about dominating the space. And what is the Spanish? Is it juego? Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that's what it is. Juego de positional play or something.
Juego de posición. Yes, positional play, juego de posición.
Yes. So one of the misconceptions that people often have is there's a lot of managers that play possession style football, and people like to group them all together. So in the book, you explained the difference between, I think the example you used was Arsene Wenger. You used the example of Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. And just for people who are listening, what's the difference between the style that Arsene Wenger uses and the style that Guardiola used at Barcelona?
Good question. Arsene Wenger, as a lot of coaches, they like possession and they like to be a protagonist with the ball. They want to make the game a beautiful game, but they are not controlling a space when they are doing that. Most of Wenger, Arsene Wenger teams, they were really weak in defense because they were not controlling a space. And that's the big difference, that Guardiola's team and positional play, they are not only concerned with beauty, they are also concerned with competitiveness. And competitiveness, they are doing it through controlling the space, not only trying to combine in a short passing game, and that could be characteristic of Arsene Wenger, the short passing game. They are not concerned about short passing, maybe it's long passing, maybe it's mid-distance passing. That's not a principle. We are concerned with controlling the space, and with that controls the space, we are going to combine to attack in the best way.
So one of the questions that people often ask, because I think positional play is often very associated with a specific formation, for example, the 4-3-3. So people often ask, is it possible for positional play to be applied to other formations?
Sure, for sure. Systems like formations are only the initial point of reference for the players. They have a point of reference, an area that they are mostly or preferentially there, but they can move. And with those movement, with those decisions of movement, they are going to impact the control of the space that we are talking about all the time. So 4-3-3 has been one of the most frequent formations for positional play. 3-4-3 has been another one, because that creates the possibility of having players in different heights, in 4 different heights, and covering the width of the pitch. In opposite to that, 4-4-2 has only preferentially 3 heights in which the players are set, and that's why it's not that recommended for positional play.
Oh no! Give me a second.